Okay, let's dive right in. We've got some really interesting articles lined up today. First off, something that could change how all of us shop online.
Yeah, this potential link between ChatGPT and Shopify.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of people talking.
Right. Developer spotted code, hints of a Shopify checkout link inside ChatGPT.
And the Shopify CEO himself kind of fanned the flames, didn't he? Confirming the excitement around it.
So what does this actually mean, like practically speaking?
Well, imagine you're looking for, say, the best running shoes. Instead of Googling, scrolling, opening tabs,
Uh-huh.
you just ask ChatGPT. And it doesn't just give you info, it shows you options, prices, and maybe even a buy now button right there in the chat.
Wow, so cutting out all those middle steps.
Exactly. Historically, online shopping has been pretty fragmented, you know? Search engines, maybe social media, lots of clicking back and forth.
This sounds way more direct. Seamless, almost.
That's the idea, a seamless in-chat experience, which for you, the listener, could mean shopping faster, maybe getting more personalized recommendations without all the legwork.
No more endless scrolling. Sounds good to me. But what about the sellers? The businesses on Shopify?
That's where it gets really interesting. This could potentially turn Shopify, almost overnight, into a massive marketplace, giving millions of merchants instant access to all of ChatGPT's users.
Okay, but hang on. If ChatGPT is the gatekeeper, how do brands make sure their products get recommended?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How does the AI choose? Will smaller businesses get a fair shot, or will it favor bigger players?
And what about brand identity? If the AI just summarizes product descriptions, does your unique voice get lost?
It definitely could. Brands might lose some control over how they're presented. It's a whole new marketing challenge.
This really feels like a potential threat to Google, then.
Oh, for sure. The articles call it a looming threat. If people start product discovery in a chatbot instead of a search bar, that hits Google's main business, search ads, right?
Directly. Less search, potentially less ad revenue. It's a fundamental challenge.
So Google's response, they can't be just watching this happen. No way. They're pouring resources into their own AI, right? AI overviews, Gemini upgrades. They want to be part of this conversational commerce trend, not bypassed by it.
And they have a ton of user data, which must give them an edge.
A massive edge,
Mhm.
potentially. Understanding user intent, purchase history, that's gold in this game. ChatGPT doesn't really have that kind of data stack.
So for OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, to really compete in shopping, what do they need?
Well, the thinking is they might need their own browser eventually, or maybe Shopify evolves into something more like Amazon. They apparently even thought about building a browser at one point.
Fascinating. It's a real tech battle shaping up, changing how we find and buy things.
Absolutely. The future of online discovery and purchase could look very different very soon.
Okay, let's shift gears now to a much more serious and somber topic. The recent terror attack in Pahalgam, Kashmir.
Yes, the articles we reviewed frame this as a particularly worrying development, possibly the first large-scale attack targeting civilians in this manner since the Mumbai attacks back in 2008.
And the details are disturbing. The reported segregation of victims based on religion. It seems calculated not just to spread terror, but maybe to incite wider communal issues.
That's certainly a concern raised. It's brutal, and it hits tourism, the local economy, but also risks tearing at the social fabric more broadly within India.
The nature of the attack itself is described differently, too. Not like the typical Fedayeen style, but more precise, maybe even with an escape plan.
Right, suggesting a different kind of planning, perhaps. And the Indian government's response has been strong signal so far. Talk of diplomatic measures like looking at the Indus Waters Treaty and giving the military the green light for planning.
But the core question the analysis raises is, what's the long-term response, beyond just immediate retaliation?
Exactly. How do you craft a strategy that actually deters future attacks and changes the calculus for those supporting cross-border terrorism? It's not just about revenge.
Looking back, India's responses have varied, haven't they? Mobilization after the parliament attack, diplomacy after Pathankot, then the surgical strikes, Balakot.
Yes, quite a range. And the article suggests that because of this history, another military response might be, well, expected, which could reduce its strategic impact or element of surprise.
So planners have a tough job. Counterterrorism, retaliation, and managing any counter-retaliation from Pakistan.
It's incredibly complex. And the sources flag 3 potential areas for miscalculation.
Okay, what are they?
First, a perception that Pakistan's military leadership might actually want some level of escalation.
Mm.
Second, the role of China, especially concerning CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor.
Mm. China's involvement always adds another layer. And the third?
Any hasty Indian military move that looks like it's trying to redraw maps in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, that could be highly escalatory.
Diplomatically, it's tricky too. International pressure for restraint is likely, right? From the
Yeah.
US, UK, EU, even partners in the Gulf.
Absolutely. And suspending the Indus Waters Treaty, that's not straightforward either. You'd get pushback from the World Bank, maybe other countries sharing rivers.
And at the UN, the initial statement was apparently quite weak, watered down.
Yeah, so the suggestion is India needs to push hard, like after Mumbai and Pulwama, to get groups like the Resistance Force, or TRF, designated as terrorist organizations, and maybe revisit pressure on Pakistan through FATF, the financial watchdog.
There's also mention of a perhaps controversial long-term idea being revisited.
Yes, the idea of making the line of control, the Law Sea, a more formal, maybe eventually permanent international border.
Why bring that up now?
The argument is that the ambiguous status of the Law Sea has been exploited for decades for proxy conflicts, and that demographic changes have been happening in Pakwai. So perhaps revisiting older proposals from around 2007 about formalizing the Law Sea could be a long-term strategic shift.
So putting it all together, it paints a picture of a really volatile situation.
Extremely delicate. Crafting a response that is effective, addresses security needs, but also manages all these complex regional and international dynamics. It's a huge challenge.
All right, let's travel much further north now to the Arctic, a region the articles describe as quietly slipping into turmoil.
Yeah, it's quite a shift. For a long time, we mostly thought of the Arctic in terms of science, climate change, environment,
Mm-hmm.
maybe indigenous communities.
But now,
Now it's increasingly becoming a stage for military posturing and geopolitical competition. You've got a more assertive Russia, China making its presence felt as a near-Arctic state.
and climate change is a huge driver here, isn't it? Melting ice, opening things up.
Definitely. It's opening up new sea routes, like the Northern Sea Route along Russia's coast, and making resources, oil, gas, minerals more accessible. This is leading to a bit of a scramble for access.
It's not just about resources and shipping lanes, though, is it? There's a military dimension creeping in.
A steady militarization, as one piece puts it. Arctic nations are reopening old Cold War bases, deploying new forces, holding more exercises. Even that seemingly odd idea a few years back of the U.S. wanting to buy Greenland.
Right, I remember that.
It kind of signaled this big shift, recognizing the Arctic's growing strategic importance in global power politics.
Okay, so for a country like India, a non-Arctic state, why does this matter? The article suggests India seems kind of impassive.
Yeah, that's the critique, that while these big strategic shifts are happening, India's focus seems to be elsewhere, or perhaps not fully grasping the implications.
India does have an Arctic policy from 2022. What's the issue with it?
The policy exists, yes, but the analysis suggests it heavily emphasizes climate science, the parallels with the Himalayas, which are important for sure,
Yeah.
but it arguably underplays the Arctic's rapidly evolving strategic landscape. It maintains a sort of restrained posture that might lead to India being sidelined as the region becomes more contested.
India has a research base, right, in Svalbard, and observer status at the Arctic Council.
It does, but those mechanisms, the Council especially, were set up for a more cooperative time. With current tensions, particularly involving Russia, their effectiveness is limited. The idea that scientific diplomacy alone is enough seems, well, outdated.
So what are the concrete stakes for India here?
They're significant. If the Northern Sea route becomes a major shipping artery, it could divert trade away from traditional routes through the Indian Ocean. That impacts India's maritime strategy, its Indo-Pacific connectivity plans,
Hadn't thought of that direct link.
and the growing Russia-China coordination in the Arctic. That blurs the lines between the Arctic and the Indo-Pacific theaters. Plus, Nordic countries are apparently getting a bit uneasy about India's close ties with Russia, given the situation.
So the call is for a recalibration of India's approach.
Exactly. A sharper strategic focus. The suggestion is threefold. First, institutionalize Arctic engagement beyond just science, maybe dedicated desks in relevant ministries.
Okay.
Second, partner more actively with like-minded countries, both Arctic and non-Arctic, maybe on things like infrastructure or monitoring dual-use initiatives.
And third,
Actively seek a role, a seat at the table, in whatever new governance forums emerge for the Arctic, but do it sensitively, avoiding an extractive mindset.
So relying purely on science in climate diplomacy just isn't going to cut it anymore.
That seems to be the consensus in these analyses. Geopolitics and power are increasingly shaping the Arctic's future, and India needs a strategy that reflects that reality to stay relevant there.
Okay, bringing it back down to earth, quite literally. Let's talk about farming and solar power combined. Agrophotovoltaics or APVs?
Right, agrophotovoltaics. It sounds complex, but the basic idea is pretty neat. Using the same piece of land to grow crops and generate solar energy.
How does that work? You just put solar panels in a field.
Well, yeah, but they're usually elevated, raised high enough off the ground so you can still farm underneath them or between the rows of panels. It's about optimizing land use for a dual harvest, food and energy.
And this isn't a brand new concept?
No, not at all. Apparently, the idea goes back to German scientists in the early 80s, but it's getting more attention now, especially with the push for renewables and sustainable agriculture.
What's the big draw for farmers, besides growing crops?
Income diversification is key. They can use the energy themselves, maybe for irrigation pumps, but also potentially sell surplus power back to the grid. That could really augment their income.
So is this happening much in India?
There's growing interest, but it seems mostly limited to pilot projects and research studies so far, not widespread commercial adoption yet.
Any examples of potential impact?
One study mentioned looked at a farmer in Delhi who leased land for an APV setup. Their income apparently increased significantly compared to just farming. Another hypothetical scenario, using shade-tolerant, high-value crops under the panels, suggested income could potentially increase sixfold.
Sixfold, that's huge. Are there other benefits besides money?
Yes, potentially. The panels can create a microclimate underneath offering shade, which might reduce water evaporation from the soil and protect crops from excessive heat stress, especially in hot climates.
Okay, sounds promising. What are the hurdles then? Why isn't it everywhere?
A major challenge highlighted for India is the lack of standardized norms or guidelines. Countries like Japan and Germany have specific rules, minimum panel height, how much crop yield loss is acceptable, things like that. India doesn't really have that framework yet.
And cost must be a factor, especially for small farmers.
Absolutely. APV systems are generally more expensive to install than standard ground-mounted solar farms because of the raised structures. For India's smallholder farmers, who are the majority, overcoming this high upfront cost is a big barrier.
So how do you make it work for them?
Leveraging farmer-producer organizations, providing institutional support, financial assistance, that seems crucial. And critically, having a good price, a remunerative feed-in tariff for the electricity they sell back to the grid.
A feed-in tariff. You mean the price the utility pays for the solar power?
Exactly. If the price is attractive enough, it makes the whole investment worthwhile and shortens the payback period for the farmer or investor. Government support, like capacity building programs, is also needed.
Is there any specific government policy supporting APVs in India right now?
Apparently not a dedicated one. The suggestion is that integrating APVs more explicitly into existing schemes, like the PM CUTE-USM program, which focuses on solarizing agriculture, could be a real game changer.
So it boils down to needing clear rules, strong financial incentives, and farmer-focused policies.
Pretty much. Without that robust framework and strong economic signals, APVs might just remain a niche concept rather than a widespread solution for sustainable farming and energy in India.
Okay, finally, let's head south to the coast of Kerala to talk about the Vizhinjam port. It's being called India's maritime game changer.
Yes, after literally decades of discussion and delays, India finally has its first deep-water container transshipment port up and running. It was officially inaugurated.
Transshipment?
Yeah.
That means transferring cargo from one big ship to smaller ones or vice versa, right?
Exactly. And currently, a huge chunk of India's international cargo that needs transshipping actually goes via ports outside India, like Colombo in Sri Lanka or Singapore or ports in the Gulf.
So we're losing out on that business.
We are. And it adds cost and time to India's trade. Vizhinjam's big advantage is its location. It's very close to the main international east-west shipping lanes.
And it's deep.
Naturally deep, about 20 meters. That means it can handle the really massive container ships, the ultra-large container vessels, that many other ports in the region simply can't accommodate due to depth limitations.
Has it started making waves already?
It seems so. Major shipping lines like MSC are already calling there. It's apparently handled significant traffic already, even setting some national records for the largest ship docked and the most containers moved off a single vessel.
That's impressive for a new port. And it's being developed as a public-private partnership.
Correct. Investment from the Kerala government, the Adani Group's port division, and the Central Union government. It's also noted as India's first greenfield port built from scratch and its first semi-automated one.
Semi-automated. Interesting.
Yeah, using advanced cranes and technology. They even highlighted a skilled women workforce operating some of this automated equipment.
So the potential is huge, but what needs to happen to really make it a success on a global scale?
It needs a global push, as the articles say, active promotion internationally, which the Kerala government seems to be doing, and crucially, fast-tracking the next phases of development to really ramp up its handling capacity.
Are there bottlenecks or challenges still?
Yes, definitely. The development of supporting infrastructure needs to keep pace. Things like an integrated check post for customs and security is apparently still pending approval. A permanent port health office is also needed. These things are essential for smooth operations.
And connecting infrastructure, roads, rail.
Critical. Timely completion of highways and railway lines connecting to the port is vital to move cargo efficiently in and out. The state government has announced a special development zone around the port to encourage this.
What about related businesses like ship repairs or fuel?
That's part of the plan, too. Promoting allied industries like shipbuilding, and especially bunkering, providing fuel for ships. Adani Ports has ambitions to make Vizhinjam a hub for green fuels, like green methanol or ammonia, for ships.
There's even talk of renaming it.
Yeah, a campaign to call it Trivandrum International Seaport, presumably for better global recognition, linking it to the state capital nearby.
And the idea of a special economic zone like Shenzhen in China.
That's been floated as a way to turbocharge economic growth around the port. But there are also some noted concerns, potential competition from another proposed transshipment hub nearby, and questions about the repayment terms for the central government's funding contribution.
So it's got the location, the depth, the initial infrastructure, but its ultimate success hangs on policy, business adoption, and quick decisions.
That seems to be the bottom line. Vizhinjam has all the ingredients to be a major maritime hub for India, but realizing that potential requires sustained focus and strategic execution from everyone involved.
So, wrapping up our deep dive today, we've covered a lot of ground. From AI potentially reshaping your online shopping
To the really complex strategic choices India faces after the Pahalgam attack and the shifting geopolitical sands in the Arctic.
and then bringing it back to tangible developments like solar panels, over crops, and this potentially game-changing port in Kerala.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How technology, geopolitics, climate change, economic development, they all seem separate, but they're deeply interconnected, shaping the world in pretty profound ways.
Absolutely. Hopefully this discussion has sparked some new thinking for you, connecting some of those dots.
Yeah, maybe next time you're shopping online or you see a headline about the Arctic or India-Pakistan relations, you'll think about some of these underlying dynamics we talked about.
That's really the goal, isn't it? To give you those essential insights, maybe a few aha moments.
Definitely. And here's maybe a final thought to leave you with. As AI, like ChatGPT, gets woven more and more into our daily lives, like potentially with shopping, how do we strike that balance, the balance between the convenience and personalization it offers?
And maybe losing some of that serendipity, that random discovery, or even control over our own choices and data.
Exactly. Where's that line? It's something we'll all need to grapple with, I think. Definitely worth mulling over.